James Harrison was bored, and that usually meant trouble. Sprawled on his quantum yacht, somewhere off the coast of New Zealand, the world's youngest tech trillionaire absently swirled a glass of century-old whiskey while holographic displays danced before his eyes. The Galactic Commerce Network's annual luxury auction was in full swing, but even the exotic items on offer failed to spark his interest. A slight buzz from the neural implant at the base of his skull indicated another incoming lot. James barely glanced at it until the auctioneer's silky voice caught his attention. Lot 847. Exclusive rights to planet Proxima 7, a pristine Class M world in the Outer Rim. Opening bid, 100 billion credits. James sat up straighter, his cybernetic eye automatically zooming in on the planet's specs. Pristine atmosphere, abundant resources, and, most intriguingly, classified as uninhabited. Something about the classification pinged his instincts as odd, but the whiskey had dulled his usual sharp judgment. "Steward," he called out, "what's our current liquidity?" The AI materialized beside him, its holographic form crisp in the afternoon sun. "Current available funds stand at 850 billion credits, sir. Though I feel compelled to remind you that the board meeting is tomorrow, and they're already concerned about your recent purchase of that quantum singularity collection." James waved away the warning. His board of directors had long since learned to deal with his impulsive acquisitions. Besides, a whole planet. That would make him the first human to privately own an extraterrestrial world. The headlines alone would boost Harrison Tech's stock by double digits. Without further thought, he placed his bid. The auctioneer's voice purred with satisfaction. "Sold to James Harrison for 100 billion credits. Congratulations on your purchase of Proxima 7. James grinned, already imagining the possibilities. A private paradise world, perhaps a luxury resort for the galaxy's elite. Or better yet, a testing ground for Harrison Tech's more experimental technologies. "Steward, prep the stellar wing. We're going to inspect our new property." The journey to Proxima 7 took 3 weeks, even with his ship's advanced quantum drive. James spent the time studying everything available about his purchase, though the official data seemed surprisingly sparse. The planet's location in the Outer Rim explained some of the mystery. That region of space was still largely unexplored by human standards. As the stellar wing broke through Proxima 7's atmosphere, James stood at the observation deck, his cybernetic eye recording everything. The planet's surface was breathtaking. Vast crystalline forests stretched to the horizon, their faceted branches refracting sunlight in rainbow patterns. Floating islands drifted through the violet sky, connected by bridges of pure energy. "Sir," the steward's voice held a note of concern, "I'm detecting significant energy signatures. These readings suggest advanced technology." Before James could respond, a massive structure shimmered into existence directly ahead, a city of impossible architecture, with spires that seemed to bend reality itself. And more importantly, it was very much inhabited. A communication signal pierced their shields, as if they weren't even there. A figure materialized on the bridge, a tall, ethereal being with opalescent skin and eyes that held ancient wisdom. "Welcome, James Harrison," the being spoke, its voice resonating directly in his mind. "I am High Sovereign Tharak of the Proximon Collective. We've been expecting you." James fought to maintain his composure, though his heart raced. "High Sovereign, there seems to be a misunderstanding. I was led to believe this planet was uninhabited." Tharak's expression remained unreadable. "No misunderstanding, Mr. Harrison. We allowed ourselves to be purchased because we needed to make contact with humanity in a way that wouldn't create panic. Your reputation for unconventional thinking made you the perfect candidate. Before James could process this revelation, another figure materialized, younger, fierce, with eyes that blazed like captured stars. "This is absurd, High Sovereign," she declared. "We cannot entrust our people's fate to this. This human who thinks he can buy worlds on a whim." "Peace, Venna," Tharak raised a hand. "Mr. Harrison's arrival was foreseen. The time of isolation is ending, whether we wish it or not." James found himself unable to look away from Venna, whose presence radiated power and passion. She met his gaze with open defiance, and in that moment he knew his life would never be the same. "Well," he said, managing a slight smile, "since I've apparently bought myself into an intergalactic political situation, perhaps we should discuss terms." He turned to Venna, unable to resist adding, "Unless you prefer to just throw me off my own planet." Venna's eyes narrowed, but James caught the slightest twitch of her lips. "The day is young, human," she replied. "Don't tempt me." High Sovereign Tharak observed their exchange with ancient eyes that held secrets spanning millennia. "Come," he said, gesturing toward the impossible city below. "We have much to discuss about the future of both our peoples." As the stellar wing descended toward the crystal spires of the Proximum capital, James Harrison, tech billionaire, innovator, and accidental planetary ruler, realized that all his wealth and technology hadn't prepared him for this moment. He'd wanted to make history by becoming the first human to own a planet. Instead, he might have just become the key player in humanity's first contact with an advanced civilization. And somewhere between the stars and secrets, a fierce-eyed Proximum woman watched his every move, her opposition promising to make this the most interesting challenge of his life. The crystalline spires of the Proximum capital, Luminara, defied every law of physics James thought he knew. As he followed High Sovereign Tharak through corridors that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once, his cybernetic eye struggled to process the impossible geometry surrounding them. "Your confusion is natural," Tharak said, his ethereal voice echoing in James's mind. "Our technology evolved along paths your species has yet to discover. We manipulate reality itself, not merely the physical world." To demonstrate, Tharak waved his hand, and the corridor transformed into a vast chamber that appeared to float in open space. Stars wheeled overhead, and beneath their feet, a three-dimensional map of the galaxy sparkled with countless points of light. "Show off," Venna muttered behind them. She had insisted on accompanying their tour, claiming it was for security purposes. James suspected she simply didn't trust him alone with the High Sovereign. "Your mistrust is misplaced, Venna," Tharak chided gently. "Mr. Harrison's arrival was prophesied in the time crystals centuries ago." James raised an eyebrow. "Time crystals? And please call me James. If I'm part of some ancient prophecy, we might as well be on first-name terms." Venna made a sound suspiciously like a snort. "The time crystals are our most sacred relics. They show possible futures, though some of us question whether we should let their visions dictate our actions." James turned to study her. In the starlight, Venna's opalescent skin seemed to shimmer with suppressed energy. Her dark hair contained threads of luminescence that shifted like aurora borealis, and her eyes, he forced himself to look away before he got lost in their stellar depths. "The crystals led us to orchestrate our own purchase," Tharak explained. "Our civilization faces a crossroads. Isolation has protected us, but it can no longer ensure our survival." "Survival?" James frowned. "From what I've seen, you're far more advanced than humanity. What could threaten you?" Before Tharak could answer, The chamber's entrance rippled, and a group of Proximans burst in. Their leader, a stern-faced female with silver-streaked hair, fixed James with a penetrating stare. "So this is the human who presumes to own our world," she said, her mental voice sharp with disdain. "High Sovereign, the Council demands an explanation." "Councillor Rena," Tharak acknowledged calmly. "I was just explaining to James." James. Rena's eyes narrowed. Already on familiar terms with the outsider. This is precisely why the Council should have been consulted before this reckless scheme was enacted. Vena stepped forward, surprising James by moving slightly in front of him. "The High Sovereign acts with the wisdom of the time crystals, Councillor. Or do you question their guidance as well?" "I question the judgment of those who interpret them," Rena snapped. "Particularly young radicals who would throw open our doors to the galaxy without considering the consequences." James watched the exchange with growing fascination. The political dynamics were becoming clearer. Tharak and his supporters, including Vena, sought controlled contact with the outside galaxy, while conservatives like Rena wanted to maintain isolation. "If I may," he interrupted, drawing all eyes to him. "You orchestrated this situation, bringing me here for a reason. Instead of arguing about whether it should have happened, perhaps we should discuss what comes next." Rena's expression darkened, but Tharak nodded approvingly. "Indeed, the time crystals showed us that isolation would lead to our destruction. They also showed that humanity, despite its young age among the stars, holds the key to our survival." "And you believe that key is him?" Rena gestured dismissively at James. "A human who purchases planets on a whim." "That whim was guided by forces beyond your understanding, Councillor," Tharak replied firmly. "James Harrison's arrival has set events in motion that cannot be undone. The question now is whether we will shape those events or be shaped by them." James felt Vena's eyes on him and turned to meet her gaze. To his surprise, he saw uncertainty there, perhaps even a glimmer of curiosity beneath her defensive hostility. "The High Sovereign speaks wisdom," she said, still holding James's gaze. "But we must ensure our people's interests are protected. I propose that I be assigned as Mr. Harrison's liaison to monitor his activities and ensure compliance with our laws." James bit back a smile, a transparent attempt to keep him under surveillance, but he found himself looking forward to spending more time with his fairside watchdog. "An excellent suggestion," Tharak agreed, and James caught a knowing look in the ancient being's eyes. "The Council will, of course, be kept fully informed of all developments." Rena clearly wanted to object, but protocol prevented her from challenging the High Sovereign's decision. "Very well," she said stiffly. "But remember, outsider, one wrong move, and your ownership of Proxima 7 will become meaningless, prophecy or no prophecy." After the Council members departed, James turned to Vena. "So you're my babysitter now." "I'm your keeper," she corrected, but her lips twitched slightly. "And don't think I won't throw you into a quantum prison if you step out of line." "I would expect nothing less," James replied, finding himself oddly thrilled by the prospect of matching wits with her. "Shall we begin with a tour? I should at least see what I supposedly own." Tharak watched their exchange with ancient amusement. "Go," he said. "Show our guest the wonders of Luminar. But remember, both of you, the time crystals showed partnership, not conflict, as the path to survival." As they left the chamber, James glanced at Vena. "Any chance you'll tell me what actually threatens your civilization?" "When you prove yourself trustworthy," she replied. Then, surprisingly, she added, "if you prove yourself trustworthy." It wasn't much, But James Harrison had built an empire on recognizing opportunities in small openings. As they walked through the impossible city, watched by curious Proximans, he began planning how to earn the trust of both this remarkable civilization and its intriguing guardian. He just hoped he'd live long enough to succeed at either. The next week on Proxima 7 challenged everything James thought he knew about reality. Under Venna's watchful eye, he explored a civilization that made Earth's most advanced technology look primitive in comparison. Your neural implant, Venna observed as they walked through a garden of crystalline flowers that sang in harmonic frequencies. It's quite primitive. James touched the base of his skull where the implant resided. State of the art on Earth. Though I'm guessing you have something better. Instead of answering, Venna reached out and barely touched his temple. James gasped as his consciousness expanded exponentially. Suddenly, he could feel the living energy of everything around him. The singing crystals, the quantum fluctuations in the air, even the subtle pulse of Venna's own bioelectric field. That, she said, withdrawing her touch, is how we perceive reality. James staggered slightly, his mind reeling from the experience. That was incredible. How do you maintain sanity with that level of awareness? We're born with it, she replied. It's why isolation protected us. Most species aren't ready for contact with minds that perceive reality so differently. James studied her, noting how the luminescent threads in her hair shifted with her emotions. Yet you're choosing to reveal yourselves now. What's changed? Before Venna could answer, a deep tremor shook the ground. The crystal gardens chimed in discordant alarm as cracks appeared in the seemingly indestructible structures around them. No, Venna whispered, her face paling. Not here. Not yet. She grabbed James's hand, and suddenly they were elsewhere. Instantaneous quantum teleportation to what appeared to be a secure command center deep within the city. High Sovereign Tharak was already there, along with several council members, including the hostile Renna. The barriers are failing, Tharak announced grimly. They found us sooner than the crystals predicted. Who's found you? James demanded. What's really going on here? Renna turned on him furiously. This is your fault. Your presence drew their attention. Enough. Tharak's voice carried such power that everyone, even Renna, fell silent. James deserves to know the truth. Show him. Venna led James to a central display that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once. 3 centuries ago, she explained, we detected something moving between galaxies, something that devours civilizations. The display showed a massive dark entity, like a living void that consumed light itself. James watched in horror as it approached a populated system, and simply erased it from existence. We call them the Void Hunters, Tharak said quietly. They seek out advanced civilizations and absorb them, their knowledge, their technology, their very essence. We hid Proxima 7 behind quantum barriers, making our world appear uninhabited. But now they've detected us, Venna continued. The time crystals show that isolation would lead to our destruction because we cannot fight them alone. We need humanity's help. James frowned. No offense, but how could we help? Your technology is far beyond ours. Because, Tharak explained, humanity possesses something unique in the galaxy, unpredictability. Your species makes impossible leaps of logic, finds solutions where none should exist. The Void Hunters cannot predict what they cannot understand. Another tremor shook the command center. On the display, darkness began seeping through cracks in Proxima 7's quantum barriers. This is why you arranged for me to buy the planet, James realized. You needed a way to establish official contact without drawing attention. But why me specifically? Vena's expression softened slightly. The time crystals showed us that humanity's chaos, combined with our order, might create something new, a defense the Void Hunters cannot overcome. And you, James Harrison, represent the perfect blend of human innovation and reckless determination. Reckless. James raised an eyebrow. I prefer to think of it as entrepreneurial spirit. Call it what you will, Rena interrupted. But if you truly own this world, outsider, prove your worth. Help us save it. James looked around the command center, at Tharak's ancient wisdom, Rena's desperate hostility, and Vena's carefully guarded hope. He thought about Earth, unknowingly living under threat of extinction from an enemy they couldn't even comprehend. My neural implant, he said slowly. Could you modify it to let me perceive reality like you do? Permanently? Vena's eyes widened. The process could kill you. No non-proximan has ever survived neural integration. James grinned. Impossible odds against an unbeatable enemy. Sounds like my kind of challenge. He turned to Tharak. Besides, your time crystals wouldn't have brought me here if I was going to die right away, would they? The High Sovereign's expression remained neutral, but James caught a glimmer of approval. The integration must be voluntary, Tharak said. And even if you survive, you will never be the same. Good, James replied, his eyes meeting Vena's. The old me bought planets for fun. Time to become someone who can help save them instead. Vena stepped forward. I will perform the integration. I am the most qualified in neural mechanics, and she hesitated, then continued softly. And I owe you that much for judging you too quickly. As preparations began for the risky procedure, James watched the encroaching darkness on the displays. He'd wanted to make history by becoming the first human to own a planet. Instead, he might become the first human to help save one, if he survived the next few hours. Ready? Vena asked, her hands poised near his neural implant. James took a deep breath. Hit me with your best shot, Starlight. Her eyes widened slightly at the nickname, but before she could respond, her fingers made contact with his implant, and James Harrison's world exploded into impossible new dimensions of reality. James floated in an ocean of impossible sensations. Every quantum particle in the universe seemed to sing to him. A symphony of reality he'd never imagined could exist. Through the chaos of neural integration, one presence anchored him, Vena's consciousness, intertwined with his own, guiding him through the transformation. Stay with me. Her voice echoed through multiple dimensions of his awareness. Your mind is adapting faster than any we've seen, but you must not lose yourself in the quantum flow. James forced himself to focus on her presence, using it as a lighthouse in the store of new perceptions. Gradually, the overwhelming sensations began to organize themselves into comprehensible patterns. He opened his eyes, all of them now, both physical and quantum, and saw the world as the Proximans did. By the time crystals, Rena breathed, watching as James's body shimmered with newly awakened energy patterns. He actually survived. James stood, marveling at how he could perceive every energy field, every quantum probability around him. The neural integration had changed more than his consciousness. His entire body now resonated with Proximan energy. The barriers are down to 60%. A technician announced, her voice carrying both sound and quantum harmonics. The Void Hunters will breach within hours. Then we don't have much time, James said, his voice carrying new harmonics that made the crystalline walls vibrate in sympathy. He turned to Tharak. I think I understand now. The Void Hunters consume civilizations, because they can predict and counter any defense. But they've never encountered a hybrid consciousness before, proximum perception combined with human intuition. Tharak nodded. Your transformation was the first step, but even with your unique perspective, defeating the Void Hunters will require something unprecedented. James reached out with his new senses, feeling the quantum structure of reality itself. Ideas began forming in his mind, impossible, brilliant, absolutely insane ideas that only a human would conceive and only a proximum could execute. Venna, he called, and she was instantly beside him, their quantum fields harmonizing automatically. The crystalline forests. They're not just plants, are they? They're natural quantum computers. Her eyes brightened with understanding. Yes, we've used them for calculations, but never as weapons. The energy requirements would be massive, James finished. But what if we linked them to Earth's quantum computing grid? The combination of our technologies, filtered through a hybrid consciousness, could create a quantum cascade effect, Tharak caught on, disrupting the Void Hunter's ability to predict and consume. It's insane, Renner protested. Linking our quantum systems with primitive Earth technology, the feedback alone could tear both worlds apart. That's exactly why it might work, Venna argued, her excitement building. The Void Hunters can predict perfect systems. But this would be beautifully, perfectly chaotic. James was already reaching out to the Stellar Wings quantum comm system, linking to Harrison Tech's mainframe back on Earth. My company has the largest quantum computing network on Earth. If I route it through the Neuralink, you could die. Venna grabbed his arm, her concern bleeding through their quantum connection. The power surged through your consciousness. James met her gaze, letting her feel his determination through their link. Worth the risk, Starlight, for both our worlds. The command center burst into activity as they implemented James' desperate plan. The crystalline forests were activated, their quantum potential amplified by connection to Earth's computers. James stood at the center, his hybrid consciousness acting as a bridge between the two technologies. Through his expanded awareness, he could feel the Void Hunters approaching, vast entities of anti-probability, seeking to consume all that was unique and beautiful about Proxima 7. But he could also feel something else. Venna's consciousness, standing with him in the quantum storm, their energies intertwined in ways that transcended physical reality. The Hunters have breached the outer barriers, someone shouted. 20 minutes to full penetration. Now, James commanded and initiated the quantum cascade. Power surged through him, excruciating yet exhilarating. Earth's binary certainty collided with proximum quantum possibility, creating something entirely new. Through their neural link, he felt Venna's amazement as new forms of mathematics wrote themselves into reality. The Void Hunters faltered, encountering something they couldn't predict or consume. The hybrid quantum cascade created probability storms that even they couldn't navigate. For the first time in their ancient existence, they faced uncertainty. It's working, Venna's joy pulsed through their connection. Their consumption fields are destabilizing. But James could feel his consciousness beginning to fragment under the strain. The power flowing through him was too much for even his enhanced neural pathways. As darkness crept into the edges of his awareness, he felt Venna's panic. "No," she whispered. "I won't lose you now." Before he could stop her, she fully merged her consciousness with his, sharing the devastating load of power. Together, they became something beyond human or proximum, a perfect hybrid of chaos and order, intuition and knowledge. The Void Hunters recoiled from this new entity they couldn't comprehend. As James and Venna's merged consciousness reached out, they realized they could do more than defend. They could communicate. They're not evil, James/Venna realized. They're lonely, ancient beings who consumed knowledge seeking understanding, but never found it because they destroyed everything they touched. Through their hybrid perception, they offered the hunters a new possibility, not consumption, but communion, the chance to learn without destroying, to grow without devouring. The quantum cascade reached its peak, and James felt himself slipping away despite Venna's desperate grip on his consciousness. The last thing he heard was her voice, echoing through dimensions of reality. "Stay with me, my brilliant, impossible human. Stay with me." Then darkness took him, and James Harrison, billionaire, planetary owner, and now something entirely new, fell into the space between quantum possibilities. James floated in quantum possibility space, his consciousness scattered across multiple dimensions. Time had no meaning here. He could have been drifting for seconds or centuries. But through the infinite void, a familiar resonance called to him. "Return to us." Venna's voice echoed through realities. "Return to me." He followed her quantum signature like a beacon, gradually pulling his fragmented consciousness back together. Awareness returned slowly, first the physical sensation of crystal beneath him, then the multi-layered perception of proximate senses, and finally the hybrid awareness that bridged both worlds. "Welcome back." Tharak's ancient voice carried notes of relief. "You've been unconscious for 3 planetary cycles." James opened his eyes to find himself in a healing chamber, its crystalline walls pulsing with restorative energies. Venna sat beside him, our quantum field still partially entwined with his own. Even Rena stood nearby, her previous hostility replaced by reluctant respect. "The Void Hunters?" James asked, his voice carrying new harmonics that made the crystals sing. "Gone," Venna replied, "but not destroyed. Our hybrid consciousness showed them an alternative to consumption. They'd withdrawn to consider it." James attempted to sit up, marveling at how his perception had changed. He could see feel taste the quantum probability streams flowing through reality. But more than that, he could perceive them as both a proximate and a human, understanding their mathematical perfection while simultaneously imagining impossible new ways to use them. "The neural integration," he said. "It's permanent now, isn't it?" Tharak nodded. "The quantum cascade fused your hybrid nature at a fundamental level. You are neither fully human nor proximate, but something new. The first of your kind, but perhaps not the last." "The time crystals," Rena added, stepping forward. "They show new possibilities now. Futures where humans and proximans work together, creating defenses that even the Void Hunters cannot overcome. Your transformation was only the beginning." James looked at Venna, feeling the complex harmonics of her quantum field resonating with his own. "You saved my life," he said softly, "when you merged your consciousness with mine during the cascade." "I saved both our worlds," she corrected, but her field fluctuated with emotions that transcended physical expression. "Though I must admit, keeping you alive was a rather significant motivation." "The Council has reached a decision," Tharak announced. "Your purchase of Proxima 7 will be formally recognized, but with conditions. You will serve as an ambassador between our peoples, helping guide the integration of our civilizations. But more importantly, you will help us establish a new academy, one where selected humans and proximans can learn to achieve what you have become." "A hybrid consciousness academy." James raised an eyebrow. "Teaching humans and proximans to perceive reality in entirely new ways. That could change everything." "It already has," Venna said. She reached out, her fingers brushing his temple in what he now recognized as an intimate gesture among her people. Through their connected fields, he felt her certainty, her hope, and something deeper that made his hybrid consciousness resonate with joy. The time crystals show many possible futures now, Tharak continued. Some still hold darkness, but all show change. The age of isolation is truly over. James stood, still adjusting to his new perceptions. Through the healing chamber's walls, he could see Luminara spread out below, a city of quantum crystalline beauty that no longer had to hide. In orbit above, he detected the quantum signatures of Earthships arriving through newly established corridors, bringing the first candidates for the hybrid consciousness program. "Well," he said, turning to Venna with a grin that sparked quantum harmonics in the air between them, "I'd say this is the most profitable impulse purchase I've ever made." Profitable? Her eyes sparkled with multiple layers of amusement. "You spent 100 billion credits on a planet you'll never truly own, merged your consciousness with an alien species, and nearly died saving 2 civilizations from entropy-devouring space entities. How exactly is that profitable?" James reached out, his quantum field intertwining with hers in a gesture that made Tharak tactfully look away and Renna clear her throat. "I gained something beyond value, Starlight. A new way of seeing reality, a chance to change the future, and—" He paused, letting her feel the depth of his emotions through their connection. Someone worth crossing galaxies to find. The crystalline walls hummed with the resonance of their combined fields as Venna stepped closer. "Smooth talk for someone who accidentally bought my planet," she teased, but her consciousness revealed deeper feelings that no words could express. "Not an accident," James replied softly. "The time crystals knew what they were doing. They showed you a future worth fighting for." "Speaking of fighting," she said, her eyes glinting with familiar challenge, "you still have much to learn about your new abilities. Shall we begin your training, my impossible human?" "Lead the way, Starlight," James replied, following her out into a world of infinite quantum possibilities. "Lead the way." Behind them, Tharak watched them go, his ancient eyes seeing probability streams stretching into futures full of change and hope. The time crystals had shown him one more thing, a future where a billionaire's impulsive bid and a Proximan warrior's fierce heart would spark a revolution that would reshape the galaxy. But that, as they say, is another story. End.